Voice from beyond the edge of the universe. Part 2. Work and cognition. Having reached maturity, a person chooses an occupation in life. Occupation, as a rule, is associated with some further development of consciousness and reason. Development corresponds to the planetary task of the entity, or comes into conflict with it. This is how the genera of life are formed: work and cognition. The job involves performing duties that do not correspond to the entity's task. The more you perform such duties, the more contradictory experience you gain. The state of laziness is a signal that you need to stop and reconsider your occupation and interests. Otherwise, you will come to a critical point of contradiction, where you will come into conflict with life forms on Earth, trying to correct your task vector. Cognition characterizes an ordered movement along its vector of life task, resulting in a gradual and understandable set and awareness of the information received, which contributes to the manifestation of the true picture of the earthly world. Once you understand it, your task on the planet will be completed. There is a general rule for the planet Earth: do not lead by the hand. If a person does not learn independence here, he will not be able to cope with knowledge in another reality. Mind, being, and what we have. Attempts to escape from the mind were accepted by a person for a long time, but almost always ended in failure. The point is that the mind is a part of you that exists in objective reality. There is really nothing like time outside of it, and its principle of organization is quite different from what the mind imagines. Now try to imagine these two realities. They both have the right to be and develop. Image, feeling the next words of a human. To do this, it still has a past and a future. The mind is really just a working tool in the hands of the person that. The answer is your reality. Have you ever asked yourself, isn't it lonely for the Creator who knows everything? What were his thoughts? Teacher. Be careful with this concept. A real teacher is always with you. This is how the world works. But not all people feel this, although your children, for the most part, are quite easy to communicate with them. There is also one more important detail: your teacher must constantly change. The information you request comes through him, but he is not always able to answer by himself, and then he addresses to those who are teachers for him. But most often you are called the mind, which you can refer to every time. Communicate with the teacher respectfully, but in no case do not idolize him. This is the biggest mistake that people make. The truth and Zetas. The interpretation of truth is always given to people, but never to serve them. Knowledge can only be used, not appropriated. The Zetas are a different state of mind that also tries to communicate with you. They have a different view of the world, and they do look gloomy to you. Let us recall that thoughts form reality. Zetas do not communicate much with the outside world. They are busy with their own problems, finding in it a common language with you. The Zetas don't talk much about themselves. For example, why they have a pronounced energy crisis in their space. Combining the two vectors will support the fading vector, but not for long, since the loss problem will not be solved. In order to combine two vectors, you need to make the information available to everyone in both. The knowledge transmitted by the Zetas has one peculiarity: it is able to construct reality. If you are waiting for it, you will get it. Let us repeat that man and people do not have the ability to influence the planetary program at the moment, and, therefore, to interfere in the ongoing changes. Quality. For us, quality is the result of interaction in space. The more outward we are directed, the greater is knowledge and what you call growth. Our inner quality is constantly disappearing, giving way to other life forms, including yours. Neuroevolutionary growth is an attempt to control the program of human life. To do this, you need to go one step higher. Those who do this on the Earth stage use forced management of people, depriving them of the ability to perform their task, and sometimes directly use their life vector reserve. The result is that the insulation ring around the Earth is becoming more and more dense. Forced control. At the disposal of man now appear the means by which he is able to step over the edge of his being. This doesn't actually happen. The doppelganger you send over the edge takes away some of your energy. If this happens periodically, then you become dependent, and, therefore, controlled. All the powers and possibilities are in you and should be aware of and implemented only by you. The term ego was born on Earth, so it is static, it will never go further than the planet. The neurochemical structure is determined in an organic environment, which is typical for planetary forms. Your knowledge of this is quite real and based on the scientific basis that you know. If you want, you can actually change the neurochemical structure of organisms, which is directly related to your research on DNA, the code of which you have recently successfully deciphered. But the child will not collect more models from the constructor than the forms of parts that have a limited scope of application suggest. Your dependence is expressed in the fact that you are still on Earth and depends on its resources. This is a forced management of people, because there is interference in the planetary program, which you have the vaguest idea of. Fate of Russia. Russia has a future. It's not very colorful, but those who stay will find what they came to live for. The whole meaning of life is always in the person. Be yourself and don't wear the masks you are so used to. You can deceive your own kind, but not others. They also participate in the life of the earth. Those who do not remain will be incarnated in time or in other spaces. Incarnations. Every soul that has completed its task meets the real world. This is described in your Book of the Dead. The essence of the meeting is to accept the world and yourself in it. If this does not happen, the soul returns to the next circle for life. Man will never leave the planet if he does not understand it and himself. Incarnations are infinite, but their number varies depending on the quality of a person's study of space. If it goes at a slow pace, the soul is transferred to a more simplified level to solve the tasks assigned to it. Degradation of the soul that violates the rules is reversible, but it all depends on the degree of curvature of the vector of movement of the soul. There is a critical point after which the fall to a simpler level begins. This fall can be defined as punishment, although it is not. In the world, they do not punish, but give you the opportunity to develop in different ways. The disintegration of souls is associated with irreversible energy changes that occur during life. Most often, this is an irreversible loss of internal energy, or elements of your own program. 3, 9, and 40 days are closely related to the departure of the soul from the earthly world. Cremation speeds up the process, but leads to a loss of energy for the soul. It is best to bury as it was always accepted among the Slavs. Energy of the planet. Technologies that have recently been discovered by Earthlings come from outside. This process is manageable. It is not run by people, but by those who are much older than you, but still live on Earth. The world has never belonged to man, you're only here for a while. The deterioration of the planetary ecology is due to the attitude of the real inhabitants to you. You are given to understand that you are breaking certain rules, but many of the signs passed to you have not yet been shown. However, there is what you see, ecology, the atom. These concepts contain some of the elements of planetary energy that you try to control, getting fuel and products for life. But your system is not cyclical. The energy forms you receive fall out of the system of planetary circulation and crystallize, i.e. they turn into static closed systems. This is called pollution on Earth. Alternative energy sources exist, but they are truly kept by those who really affects the planet. If you begin to use the following types of energy, you will harm the solar system, what its inhabitants are seriously concerned about. For this reason, connection and communication is minimized with your planet. We took the initiative having decided to resume communication with you. In order not to participate in the impending environmental disaster, you will have to switch to alternative energy. First of all, these are natural plant foods. The biological niche occupied by plants is quite extensive, and you can use it to regenerate your own niche. After that, the recovery process is possible. Now you are absorbing the energy of your own life. It's not really about the products, but rather the relationships you have with each other. By exhausting each other's energy, you prevent others from going any further. Try to stop and understand what you are doing. Your question about this is already a part of the understanding in this direction. Unfortunately, the vast majority of the technologies you receive are used to harm the earth and people. Even in your system, there is a perception that you are dangerous. But we don't want to think this way, because you have a lot of good qualities. Changes on the planet. During these years, the program of changes of the planet will pass peak phases. That will concern only a small number living on Earth. Information on the status of human development in selected countries is closed to people. The peak phases will be expressed in a sharp drop in the spirituality of people, in the growing contradictions between people and biological planetary organisms, climate changes, and the principles of human thinking. Not all of this means the worst, for someone it will be for the good. All the changes will occur when the birth space of others passes through your planet. The poles are already shifting. When the poles are shifted, the planet's angle of inclination will be about 34 degrees relative to the ecliptic. But at the same time, remember that the image of the Earth is not one. Then the climate will change. A much warmer climate is being formed. Climate formation will end after your lifetime. Information about specific changes is not available to the user. It can affect the process. The universe and infinity. There are many universes. So much so that you can't imagine it. There is some parallelism in their existence, but it is not the basis for interaction. The basis for the existence of universes is a field principle that has already been discovered on Earth, but is poorly developed in the evidence base. The concept of infinity is based on a different principle than that known to your science. You don't know about cycling or field rhythm. They allow you to create different volumes with different forms of infinity. Next, the system of universes is represented in field vectors. Each of the vectors represents certain groups of universes and determines the connections between them. The system extends further, but you should be prepared for this knowledge by asking the appropriate question. There are centers of mind. Thus, the concept of divine becomes irrelevant. But this is not the end of the construction. You will never be able to imagine infinity. This knowledge is not for a man. There is no time in infinity, because it doesn't make sense. Linearity is characteristic of the Earth and some worlds, but in general the relationship of the worlds is built on a different, frequency, principle. The universe has its own limits of existence. The beginning and end are instantaneous. The entire structure appears at once. You can just accept and use the world, or you can try to understand why it was created. Only when you go beyond the edge of your world, only then you will get the answer. Otherwise, you will harm your world. Beyond the edge there is something where there is nothing that we are talking about. But that doesn't mean that there is emptiness. Light needs no interpretation, it's everywhere, and we are weaved from it. But the means of communication of Earthmen is language. It is one of the stages of understanding of the existence. It's possible to be silent, but then people will be very lonely. Common thoughts. Some time has passed. We are grateful for the communication. According to our observations, you, as representatives of people, are concerned about the following questions. 1. Knowledge of the ongoing planetary processes. Ability to manage them. 2. Conscious loneliness caused by a different perception of reality. 3. The desire to distinguish the true information from false. The fact of the trust. 4. The level of self-awareness. 5. How to get beyond the information limit, valid and critical information. 6. Who am I on Earth? What are the tasks of a man on the planet? 7. Identification of the alien world. 8. Building a world in which the I am lives. We also identified certain psychological types. Travelers communicate extremely little, but give defining formulations on the facts of communication outside of them. Of course, they have certain information, but they believe that it is not yet ripe for transferring to other people. Seekers consciously entered the path, but making only the first uncertain steps. They want to believe, but they are afraid of deception. They are already able to see and feel more than ordinary people. Most of all, they are interested in questions of contact with the opened world. Believers have adopted a certain image of the world and complement its construction. The course of thoughts and images are in the designated channel. For them, the goal is clearly defined, but everything else is only legitimate. Accepting, all questions related to the other mind are interesting. They try to understand the information fan, based on observations from the outside. Walking, are able to determine their correspondence to spatial forms and, accordingly, information. They are able to recognize information and follow the unfolding forms. Opposers accept only their own constructed image of the world. They define it as true, relying on the support of well-known views formed in the planetary environment. These are the first our views on you. They may seem wrong to some, but that is your right. We just passed on a look at communication. There is no bad or good in it, it goes on qualitatively and, we think, will continue. You can supplement the types of communicators and justify them. Also, you can add important questions of Earthlings. If you did not accept the answers to all the indicated points or want to continue them, then we are ready to talk further. As a test, ask yourself, what did I really know about the passage of Planet X, which energy image completed its passage through our planet the other day?